Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're out the range to talk about the new rifle offered by HK USA. It's called the MR27. It's a replica of the M27 adopted by the Marine Corps. In my hands, I have an A4 rifle that the Marines would use through most of the 20 years of war that we just came out of in Iraq and Afghanistan. And so these rifles were commonly seen in news and things like that. And of course, if you served in the Marine Corps during that period, you'd be very familiar with this rifle. A lot of folks were concerned about the fact that this rifle has a 20-inch barrel. The U.S. Army, through the duration of the war, would use the M4 rifle, which has a 14.5-inch barrel versus a 20-inch barrel of this rifle. But the Marines used it to great effect. But they wanted to change weapon systems, much like the Army's been trying to change weapon systems for decades. And the M27 is what the Marine Corps went with. The U.S. Army focused on the SIG Spear. Totally different story, not the subject of today's video. Today's video is about the MR27, but we're going to start off by shooting this rifle. And this is a beautiful clone build. It's an FN. And this is part of their collector series. And so these, I believe, are still available. So if you want to build a clone of a service rifle like the A4, this would be a perfect rifle to do that with. Beautiful, beautiful firearms. For 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. And when I say only, trust me, they're the only one. Patriot Mobile is a new supporter of the Military Arms Channel, and I am proud to partner with them. Patriot Mobile offers dependable nationwide coverage, giving you access to all three major networks. That means you get the same coverage you're used to without funding the left. When you switch to Patriot Mobile, you're sending a message that you support free speech, religious freedom, the sanctity of life, and, most importantly, the Second Amendment. You also are supporting military veterans and first responders. Their 100% US-based customer service team makes switching really easy. You can keep your number, you can keep your phone, or you can choose to upgrade. Their team will help you find the best plan for your needs. Just go to patriotmobile.com/Mac or call 972-PATRIOT. Get free activation when you use the offer code MAC or MAC. Join me. Make the switch today. Well, this is it, folks. The new MR27 from H&K. How do you know it's an MR27? Well, it says so right on the lower. Aside from that, if you lay this next to a first generation MR556A1, you're not going to see much of a difference between it and that rifle at all. And as a matter of fact, I have one out here to do a side-by-side comparison, but that's for a later part in the video. It has markings that are very reminiscent of the well, not the MR27, the M27, which is the actual military designation for the Marine Corps rifle. But you'll notice it has some markings on it, like this little QR code on the side. That is correct. Now, maybe it doesn't say the exact same thing. This thing, it says on it, like established 1949, things like that. But there is a QR code there with a circle around it on images I found of actual M27s. But we'll get into the details of this rifle, some of the things that are present, some of the things that are not present, and talk about why does HK do things like this? They never seem to fully give us exactly what we want, right? We want the 243, which is a semi-automatic G36, and we get the SL8. We want an M27 or even a 416, and we get the MR556A1 and the MR27. But we'll delve into that in today's video. This rifle is nice. It is very expensive. The one I have here is one of 1,000. The deployment kit rifle that has all the optics and grips and rubber heat pads and all that stuff on it, the deployment kit version, that one's even more expensive, and there's only 500 of those, but we'll talk about the details of that in today's video as well. But let's get started firing the rifle a little bit. What do we got down there? Where's my stump of firing? Boy, the vegetation. I'm gonna have to do some work out here with the old lawnmower. I do like the way they shoot. I like the rifles, a bit heavy, they balance nicely, they're pleasant to shoot, and it is cool being able to have something of a clone of the US military M27. But let's take a closer look at this rifle. On the table, I have a couple of different HK type rifles. In my hands, I have a clone of the 416. This was built from a Brownells parts kit several years ago. And because we wanted an actual 416 in the US, for the civilian market, and HK wouldn't sell it to us, we had to build our own. And so companies like Brownells stepped up, taking parts kits from demilled 416s and adding in US parts and things like that to get to a rifle like you see here. And so this would be about as close as we could get to the 416. It's a lot closer than the MR556A1 is or was. And that's what I have here. So this is an early MR556A1. This is a Gen 1 gun. I got it right when they first came out. And on top here we have the MR27. And that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit, was the similarities between this rifle and the MR27. If you look at these just laying on the table, there's a couple of visual cues that are going to set the two apart, right? Both have a 16.5-inch barrel, but what you're going to notice right away is that this has a slightly longer quad rail handguard than the early MR556A1. Now they've evolved this product. Now it has M-lock rails on it and things like that. They've lightened the profile of the barrel. This is a very heavy profile barrel, making the gun heavy, which angered people early on. They've lightened that profile a bit, and that's what's currently in this rifle, the MR27. But other than that, you're going to see an early style stock, butt pad versus the current butt pad, and then the handguards. Outwardly, that's about the only real difference from the early Gen 1 guns, which I find to be rather interesting. So this rifle, I'm going to set aside, and I'm going to talk about the MR27, but I'll probably use M27 and MR27 interchangeably in this video. One thing I do want to point out, though, that I found really, really interesting. So all the rifles have these ridiculously weird locking pins for the upper and lower, and it requires the use of a special tool that generally comes in the back of the stock right here. It's kept there with your crayon holders, and you can use this to quickly disassemble the rifle. Now, this is not something you're going to find on the military version. This is the super civilian functionality, and I've seen people talk of these as accuracy pins or something ridiculous. Accuracy in M16 isn't between the upper and lower fit, it's in the upper assembly. But you have to push this in, and it releases a little spring detent in there, and then the pin can go across. And to put it back, which makes it even more of a pain in the butt, is you have to push in this way and push the other way against your own pressure to get it to go back together. Which, why it's there, I don't know, it's just more HK super civilian nonsense. But what I found really interesting is, again, this comes off as it should, but we tried and tried and tried on the M27 to get it off, and it will not twist off. And we were looking at it and looking at it, and what HK has done, and this is not in the owner's manual, they've put a little pin in there, locking this little base plate on here so you can't access it to the storage compartment, which you can clearly see the tubes are still there. And apparently there's not a disassembly tool in there, even though it calls for one in the owner's manual, because this is not something you can now open because of that pin. Why that's there, have no idea. I do not believe that is on the M27 military version either, the pin, that is. Now you will notice there's another slight difference between these two stocks. You'll notice on this one, there is a tensioning screw. So you can adjust the tightness of the stock and how it fits on the tube. So you can minimize wobble, presumably. To take this off, the stock off the tube, you have to loosen this nut, make sure it's off or loosened. You'll notice on the MR27, that functionality is not there, and I suspect this is more true to what the military stock is like. I don't know, I don't have an actual M27 to compare it to. All right, so moving forward, the pistol grips, all that stuff are the same. Generationally, it looks like most of the components are the same. If you take a look at the markings, that'll be, quite different for the M27. So here we have that QR code that I talked about. You'll still have the HK markings here on the mag well. If you flip them over, you're going to see the MR27 markings versus the MR556A1 markings. All right, so you can see the differences in the markings. We have additional markings up here on this older rifle that are not present on this one. The barrel, as I've already mentioned, is a lighter profile barrel. You'll also note that on the MR27, just like the MR556A1s, they super civilian everything. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. I'm not going to get into the details of field stripping an AR-15 yet. Again, you guys are probably pretty familiar with it. I just want to point out some of the differences here. Let's talk about the actual 416. Now this has an MR556 lower on it. So it has the super civilian pins in it. But this has an actual parts kit bolt carrier in it. So here's the M27 bolt and carrier, and here is an actual HK 416 bolt carrier, okay? So you're gonna notice that, for example, the firing pins are slightly different between the actual 416 and the MR. You'll notice this has a conical type firing pin in it. This has a more conventional looking head on the firing pin. And there's some other slight differences, but you'll also notice that the machine gun cut for tripping the auto sear has been cut back by HK right here. You can see on the actual full auto cut, it's a bit longer. So they've made those changes. It's also interesting to note that on the MR, part of the super civilianizing of the guns, they have this cutout on the left side of the bolt carrier. And this is to keep you from inserting an actual full auto bolt carrier into your MR27 or your MR556A1. Let me demonstrate. If I go to drop this in, put the charging handle in there, make it a little easier to get it out. I go to drop this in, it's going to stop short of going completely in battery. That's because that cutout's not present. And there's a thing on the receiver inside there that's keeping the bolt carrier from going home. So you can see the differences between them. So, I mean, is this something that they had to do for ATF approval? Who knows, right? It's just part of that civilianizing. And honestly, when you're shooting a gun, it's not that big of a deal. The one thing that I find missing from the M27 that really bothers me when I'm buying a clone is it does not have the bayonet lug, okay? So another thing that's interesting about this is that we know that the MR556A1s have a cold hammer forged barrel in them that is not chrome lined. On the M27, looking at the HK website, HK is very vague about the details of its barrel on the actual M27. They don't say chrome lined. They just leave that out. Now, getting online and going from blog like TFB and various other sources on the internet, we have people saying, well, yeah, they are chrome lined, the military M27 is chrome lined, and the civilian version is, and other people saying, no, neither are chrome lined. Some are saying, well, the military is and the civilians aren't. We don't know because there's so much information out there, and HK doesn't post the actual information on their website, at least not that I can find. But what I'm pretty sure of is that this rifle has a non-chrome lined 16.5-inch barrel. Now, the military would also use the 10-inch barrel version of the gun, but obviously you're going to run into NFA problems with that if that was to be sold. Now, again, this rifle is one of 1,000 because, and I'll show you what the kit looks like that this comes in, and then you have the deployment kit, which is one of 500. This thing retails for right around $4,400. The full deployment kit with optics and all the other accessories that it comes with, that thing's right around $9,500. And it's not a perfect clone. And it's just kind of typical of what HK does. It's almost there. It's just enough maybe to get you to buy it. The fact that maybe there's 1,000 of these only might be enticing to some folks, but that's no guarantee that if these sell well, that HK won't just offer them as the MR27. It just won't have the one of 1,000 coin in the box or something. Who knows, or it won't come in the box that it comes in. They could still do that. So if you're going to look at buying one of these as an investment, keep in mind HK, if these sell well, may actually just make it a production item. They might change something to keep the value of these for the collectors, but chances are that wouldn't be the case. Now, is this vastly different from the current generation of MR556A1s? Not really. The handguard, I guess that's about it. I don't have one of them here. We've seen them come through the shop. I've not been interested in picking them up because even the MR556A1s are really expensive, like $3,500 or more. So they're not something I want to collect. Now, I'm interested in the Marine Corps history of this particular rifle, which is why I wanted this one. Now, the deployment kit would be cool, but good grief, it's $9,500 HK. The M27 is a nice rifle to shoot. The quality on it, it's extremely high. It's typical HK quality type stuff. Now, going back to the chrome-lined barrel thing. Now, the 416, we can find information out there that it has a chrome-lined barrel. On the M27 on the HK website, it just says cold hammer forged. We've talked about what's being reported on the internet. We have HK reps saying they're not chrome-lined. We have other people in the media saying they are chrome-lined. We just don't know. I don't have any way to definitively determine whether or not this is a chrome-lined barrel on this particular rifle. So I just want to put that out there. Now, I also want to talk about that this rifle is configured just like the Marine Corps M27, but there's a version of the 416 out there, the A5, that has ambi controls. This rifle doesn't have that. Matter of fact, the A5 is not something that they've carried over those features to the MR556A1 even. So we just don't get access to those features. Heck, we still don't have an adjustable gas block. So those things are going to be absent from the civilian offerings from H&K when you're looking at an MR556A1 or the MR27 like you see here. Now, so that means all the fire controls are pretty much standard on this rifle. Now, I will say that this rifle, really its intended purpose is just to appeal to the collectors. With only 1,000 of these being available in the version I have here and 500 of the deployment kit rifles, it's not intended to be an everyday rifle, a training rifle, a target shooting rifle, or a competitive rifle, or a self-defense rifle. It's just really not designed for that. Could you use it for that? Absolutely. If you have that kind of money to throw around, go for it. I think most of these are going to wind up in vaults and very few of them being shot, and people are going to probably sell them, you know, down the road as investments. So again, that's not to say HK can't sell these without the coin, without the kit, and all the other stuff that this particular rifle comes with. I'll show you that when we close out the video, because they could. But in terms of being able to shoot it and have fun with it, it is nice. I mean, I am a military small arms collector. The name of the channel is Military Arms Channel. And so I do like having a close facsimile of the M27 that the Marine Corps is using. So I am, again, very happy that the rifle is on the market. Shooting this is, you know, being a short stroke gas piston, a little punchier than a direct gas impingement rifle, but not much. It's nicely gassed. You'll notice the brass is going right out at 3 o'clock position. Now this is some Federal 55 grain American Eagle. I want to thank our friends over at Federal for supplying the ammunition free of charge to the channel. So it's not super hot stuff. This isn't M193, it's not M855, but you'll notice that the ejection on the rifle is just right. So it's not beating me up at all. A little punchier, but not horrible. And as I've said in the past, I am more of a fan of the direct gas impingement rifle, but if I'm looking for an M27 clone, I want the short stroke gas piston like this rifle has. So if you buy the entry-level version of the rifle, like I have, it'll come in this flat dark earth HK marked case. It's a really nice case. It's going to be a good case for airline travel. It has a lock point on it. It's hard. It's like Pelican style case. And inside you're going to find the rifle without the optic. I put that on there. The owner's manual, which is just a generic MR556A1 owner's manual. You'll notice it has the cutouts for all the different accessories that would, like the bipod here and other things that the deployment kit would come with. It would come with an optic, it would come with a sling, it would come with a bipod, a vertical fore-end grip, all the stuff that this doesn't have, and a sling. And the cutouts are present for all those things, but they're not here. You do get one flat dark earth PMag, which is what the Marine Corps uses, and then of course your 1 of 1,000 challenge coin in there and a lock. So it's a really, really nice case. Is the case worth the extra money over the standard MR556A1? Well, only you can decide that. So is the rifle worth the money? That's subjective. Worth is definitely subjective, so I can't tell you what you should or shouldn't do if you're interested in one of these. All I can say is I like the rifle. It's nicely made. It's cool. It's about as close as you're going to get to an M27. And for that reason, I'm glad I have this one. I'd love to have the deployment kit, but come on, guys, 10 grand HK. I can't imagine what's in that case. It's worth that amount of money. Anyway, with all that being said, if you guys have any questions about the MR27, you can ask those questions down below. I do try to stick around for the first couple of days after a video goes live to answer any questions you guys may have. If you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel so we can continue to bring you content like this, please consider becoming a part of our Patreon family. There's a link in the video description below. You get direct access to me, early access to videos, all that good stuff. Right here on YouTube, you got the thanks and subscribe button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Hit either one of those buttons and you can support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. Last but not least, swing by, check out Copper Custom. Thank you for 16 years of support. We'll talk to you guys soon.